model year. And I could spend the next 10 minutes talking about all of the little incremental changes Nissan's made year by year to make this car better and better and better. And 6 of you would care. Instead, let's take a look back at where the GT-R came from, starting with that, the C10, the car that started it all. And then we'll hop in the R32, the GT-R that cemented the Godzilla nickname and gave birth to this giant killer, the R35. You can divide the GT-R's lineage into 3 basic generations depending on what engine's under the hood, and this is the one that started it all. It's a homologation race car with a psychopath of a 2-liter, 4-valve per cylinder, twin-cam straight 6 under the hood. Its successor used the same basic engine, and we went a really long time with no GT-R at all until that happened. That's the R32, and it was also a homologation race car, but it had a twin-turbo straight 6, all-wheel drive, all-wheel steering, and all of the performance. And its 2 successors used the same engine, and we waited a long time before there was another GT-R, and then the R35 came. You know that. What you don't know is what that car sounds like at 7,000 RPM. Going to do something uncharacteristic and shut up. Listen to this car. Okay, enough fun, let's talk about the car. Those of you who are still virgins at age 30 already know this, but the Skyline was more of a Prince than a Nissan. Prince was a small Japanese car company that was purchased by Nissan with the encouragement of the Japanese government, right as this, the 3rd generation Skyline, was being developed. 3rd gen, but the first time the initials GT-R were used on a Skyline, and the GT-R was the touring car homologation version, initially a sedan, but later this coupe, both with a 2-liter Prince racing engine under the hood. The GT-R positively dominated the track, winning every single race it entered, 49 of them in a row, until a pesky rotary-powered Mazda finally broke its winning streak. And speaking of engines, the first thing you notice when you open the hood of this car is the enormity of this straight 6. It looks like a 4-liter, and yet it's a 2-liter, and that tells you something. Enormous bore, tiny little stroke. So it revs. It has twin cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and triple Webers from the factory, and it doesn't produce peak power until 7,000 RPM. If 160 horsepower out of 2 liters doesn't seem impressive, think of it this way. The current Mazda Miata's high-tech engine has variable valve timing, direct injection, and a sky-high compression ratio, and it makes 155 horsepower out of 2 liters. And the best part about this particular engine is that this car's owner is standing over there going like this, which means you better not shift until at least 7,000 RPM. I'll do my best. sounds like a Lamborghini V12, just all of that carbureted intake noise. Samurai soldier trying to kill you. Jesus! I have to say one thing about this engine. It suffers from the worst turbo lag of any naturally aspirated engine ever. There is nothing below 5,000. Nothing. Nobody home. And then from 5 grand to like 7,000 something, it pulls like you wouldn't believe. Just nuts! And this was in the 1960s when American engines revved to 3,800. Let me talk about this car's nickname for a second. In English, we call it the Hakosuka. In Japanese, it's pronounced something like Hakosuka. And that comes from 2 words, Hako, which means box, and Ska, which is the Japanese word for sky, short for skyline. So this is the boxy Skyline. Basically, it's a boxy Sky. This is the 60s, man. It was groovy. I'm driving a boxy Sky. So cool.
Groovy cars from the 1960s weren't typically light and nimble, but the GT-R was. There's no learning curve to drive this car. It's a cinch to drive fast, and it's shockingly, brutally fast in the twisties. With these sticky tires on it, this GT-R could easily outcorner sports cars that are 40 years newer.
This is the kind of car that doesn't really exist anymore today. Most modern sports cars are just brag machines for rich guys who think they're driving a racing car because the marketing people have said it's a race car for the street. No! Not here. This is an actual race car. There's nothing luxury about this at all. It's got no sound deadening. It has no nothing. It takes every bit of your effort to make it go fast.
When the C10 Skyline was replaced by the next generation, it was bigger and heavier, and while it had a GT-R with the same S20 under the hood, it was an unsuccessful one-year-only car that never went racing.
We waited 2 decades for something, anything, to recapture the magic of this GT-R.
And that finally happened in 1989 with the 8th generation of Skyline, but only the 3rd to wear the GT-R badge, the R32.
Oh, first things first. This is fast, and not like, wow, that would blow the doors off the Hako fast, because it would. This is like actual, holy, modern car fast. Like, I just can't imagine what somebody would have thought 28 years ago hitting the gas for the first time in one of these things.
You didn't need to drive one to be shocked by the R32. All you had to do was watch it on the racetrack. It's the car that earned the GT-R the Godzilla nickname. Like the Hako, the R32 GT-R was a touring car homologation build, and also like the Hako, it destroyed everything that crossed its path, and it also won every single race it entered, like the Hako. Detecting a theme here?
Related to the Hako at all. Like, there's nothing in common other than the fact that they're right-hand drive and they say GT-R on them. They don't sound the same, they don't look the same, they don't feel the same. But these cars have one big thing in common, and that's that they were both at the forefront of technology for their time. That's really interesting because they don't feel like they're 20 years apart. They feel like they're 50 years apart in terms of technology. What dominates the experience in this car is the engine, the RB26D TT. This is the straight six that everyone knows will go 400 million miles, make 5 billion horsepower, and rev to, I don't know, 250,000 billion RPM. It's indestructible. What's really surprising is its smoothness. Every time you look down, you see 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 RPM. It doesn't really sound like it's turning that fast, and it certainly doesn't feel it.
Of course, it has eons of turbo lag, and that's sort of par for the course. But the interesting thing is it pulls just as hard as a modern GT-R. It doesn't pull as long, therefore this car's not actually as fast, but it feels that fast because this thing pulls so hard. The turbos hit and it just goes. Because it, of course, has four-wheel drive, thanks to a system called Advanced stands for Advanced Total Traction Engineering System for All-Terrain with Electronic Torque. A Tesla ETS isn't just an advanced all-wheel drive system today. Only the best modern all-wheel drive systems function like this. This is a rear-wheel drive car until the computer says, oh, I need to send power to the front wheels. And when it does, there's a gauge that tells you how much torque is going to the front wheels. Why? Because that's so cool. It also has four-wheel steering, or HICAS, which stands for all-wheel steering. And that's hydraulic and it works really well. But still, this type of all-wheel drive system and rear-wheel steering, these are things that are only now becoming standard fare on the most advanced cars in production today. Think about that. This is almost 30 years old. It's modern car fast, but way more fun than any of those cars are. This is almost GT-R fast and far more enjoyable to drive, far more involving. This is one of those times where you meet your hero and say, yep, this car really does live up to every bit of its reputation.
However, all good things must come to an end. R32's domination of Japanese touring car was so absolute that it effectively killed the whole sport. It was replaced by an R33 and then an R34, both of which used the same basic drivetrain. And then, like once before, Nissan let the GT-R name wither and die. Only 5 years later, we got the R35. It dropped the Skyline name, as that now belonged to the car we knew then as the Infiniti G37, but Godzilla was back.
This GT-R was, like all of its predecessors, a technological tour de force when it came out. It killed everything. It had ridiculous power, ridiculous acceleration, ridiculous grip, ridiculous all-wheel drive. I mean, it just slaughtered everyone. But we never got to watch it in action because Nissan didn't take it racing. Instead, they took it to the Nürburgring by themselves and set a record lap time. Woo!
That lap time was 7 minutes 29 seconds, which beat just about everybody. And it pissed them all off too, especially Porsche, which was so furious that it bought its own GT-R and couldn't get within 25 seconds of Nissan's time. Porsche publicly called Nissan cheaters, saying their car was obviously on non-production race tires. Nissan responded by releasing a second video of the actual lap and images of the tires they used. And then, rather hilariously, Nissan allegedly offered free of charge driver training for Porsche's test drivers.
And you know what that sounds like to me? Just a bunch of crybabies whining, oh, your driver's faster, oh, you had better weather, come on. What we all really wanted to see was a GT-R punting a Porsche in the back fender, fighting it out for actual race car dominance. That's racing, that's what we want to see. I don't care about some computer simulated lap time, take them racing. And 9 years in, Nissan hasn't even started to work on a new GT-R yet, so we know what's going to happen. The car is going to die on the vine, and we're going to have to wait 20 years for the new one. And when the new one comes out, it's going to kick the wasabi out of everything else, which is great. I just hope Nissan takes it racing so we get to watch that. That is what made the GT-R a legend.